Look, football history, it's almost always written by the goal scorers, right? The record books, they just obsess over the Ballon d'Or winners, the massive Galactico signings, and the guys constantly grabbing the front page headlines. But here's the thing. Behind every single shining superstar, there is a shadow. The beautiful game is, at its core, a collective struggle, yet our collective memory just insists on crowning individuals. Well, in this explainer, we're stripping all of that away. We're cutting through the relentless media hype, ignoring the million-dollar brand deals, and looking way past those meticulously curated highlight reels to uncover the absolute truth. We are going to dive into the truly cinematic stories of the most underrated legends in the history of the sport. We're talking about players whose monumental careers have been historically and, quite frankly, criminally overlooked by the mainstream narrative.
Now, this quote really hits the nail on the head. Over the last 2 decades, we've been spoiled, right? We've witnessed eras of just blinding brilliance. We've watched the unprecedented, alien-like dominance of Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo. We were mesmerized by the hypnotic tiki-taka orchestration of the Spanish national team, and we sat in awe of that invincible, completely flawless run by Arsenal. But as we all know, light literally cannot exist without the dark. The true architects of these legendary dynasties, the human glue holding these insanely complex tactical frameworks together, are almost always left completely in the dark. While the superstars were out there lifting the trophies and kissing the cameras, an entire legion of elite footballers quietly laid the foundation for those exact moments, basically just accepting their secondary status in our historical consciousness.
So you really have to wonder, why do we do this? Why do we so easily ignore the players who literally bleed for the badge, the ones sacrificing their own personal glory just so that the collective team can thrive? It's a really fascinating psychological quirk of sports fandom. We just crave the spectacular, so we completely ignore the essential. Today we are breaking down football's unsung heroes into a few distinct historical archetypes. We're going to look at the cold, hard statistics, dive deep into the expert tactical analysis, and confront the emotional realities to understand exactly how football's true immortals were marginalized by the history books. We're going to completely redefine what actually makes a player truly great.
Okay, let's jump right into part 1. The ultimate sidekicks, sacrificing glory for the team.
Take the brilliant Argentine, Angel Di Maria. Now, if you look purely at public perception, he was cast as the ultimate secondary character, a mere helper to Cristiano Ronaldo at Real Madrid or a supporting actor to Lionel Messi for the Argentine national team. But the actual reality? Di Maria possessed the kind of generational talent that could have made him the marquee franchise player for almost any top club on earth. Instead, what did he do? He accepted his role. He became the guy delivering the devastating knockout blow when the stakes were at their absolute highest. He didn't just casually participate in championship teams, guys. He engineered their most triumphant, unforgettable moments.
I mean, just look at his resume. It is staggering. Back in 2014, he was literally the MVP of the Champions League final. He absolutely shattered Atletico Madrid to deliver Real Madrid's historic La Decima. And his reward for that? Being immediately sold off to make way for a shinier, more marketable signing. Fast forward, and he scores the winning goal in the 2021 Copa America final, ending Argentina's agonizing trophy drought. Then, he wins a penalty and scores in the first half of the 2022 World Cup final, cementing a legacy of unmatched, clutch performances. He is the ultimate big-game anomaly, forever living in the shadow of the very giants he helped elevate to absolute godhood.
And you know, it's not just Di Maria. Listen to Manchester City's Ruben Dias talk about Bernardo Silva. Think about that for a second. Even inside the dressing room of a treble-winning team, it took those guys years to fully grasp Bernardo's profound tactical influence. He isn't just a midfielder. The guy is a tactical chameleon. Pep Guardiola deployed him as a false 9, a holding midfielder, a number 10, and a winger, and sometimes actually he did all of that in the exact same 90 minutes. He covers more distance than anyone on the pitch while retaining the ball under immense, suffocating pressure. For a solid decade, he was the deepest tactical engine of the Premier League's greatest dynasty, yet he was rarely ever the poster boy.
Now, before Bernardo, there was David Silva, El Mago, a left-footed, creative genius who orchestrated 4 Premier League titles for Manchester City with this quiet, lethal grace. Yet on the international stage, his legacy really suffered purely due to a chronological accident. He just happened to share an era with Xavi and Andres Iniesta. Despite stepping up and starring in Euro 2008 and Euro 2012, operating as the absolutely critical link between midfield and attack, his name is tragically treated as an afterthought in conversations about Spanish midfield royalty. He was every bit as technically gifted, but history sadly only has so much room on that top podium.
Moving on to part 2, the misunderstood geniuses, when perception battles reality.
The media narrative is a wildly powerful and honestly dangerous thing. Take Gareth Bale, for example. The prevailing tabloid story loves to tell you that he was a mercenary, a guy who cared more about his golf swing and riding out his massive contract than his actual football club. But if you strip away all that noise and look at the physical reality on the pitch, wow, this guy was a genetic freak of nature who bailed out Real Madrid time and time and time again. The legendary Copa del Rey sprint where he absolutely cooked Marc Bartra. The physics-defying bicycle kick against Liverpool to win the Champions League. At his peak, Bale rivaled anyone on earth not named Messi or Ronaldo, yet his legacy is unfairly chained to a really cynical media narrative.
Mesut Ozil suffered a shockingly similar fate. Pundits were constantly attacking his body language, right? They labeled him this lazy, luxury player who just casually strolled through matches. But that was a complete optical illusion. Data actually shows Ozil routinely covered immense ground and possessed terrifying speed in offensive transitions. But more remarkably, he was a literal innovator of the sport. Just look at his signature bounce technique, intentionally chopping the ball down into the turf with vicious topspin so it pops right over a defender's outstretched leg or a diving goalkeeper in incredibly tight spaces. It was unadulterated geometric genius, and it was entirely masked by an utterly unfair narrative of lethargy.
And then there is Wayne Rooney, England's undisputed golden boy, an absolute powerhouse who smashed over 250 goals for Manchester United. But here is an astonishing historical fact that gets completely forgotten. Wayne Rooney openly told Sir Alex Ferguson he didn't even want to play as a pure number 9. He was a once-in-a-generation talent who actively chose to sacrifice his preferred central role. He dropped deep, he defended aggressively, and he grinded out matches on the left wing, specifically to unlock the potential of a young Cristiano Ronaldo. Rooney became an all-time top scorer almost by accident, while willingly doing the exhaustive, bruising, dirty work for others.
Let's dive into part 3, the relentless midfield engines, doing the dirty work.
Every team of artists requires a solid foundation built by mechanics who are willing to do the grueling, unseen labor. Enter Michael Carrick. Back in 2006, he inherited what was arguably the most intimidating job in world football, replacing the legendary, fiery Roy Keane at Manchester United. But Carrick didn't lead with fury, he led with absolute metronomic brilliance. As Sir Alex Ferguson noted, Carrick expressed everything on the field. He was an absolute master of spatial awareness. He was intercepting passing lanes before they even materialized, and launching these beautiful progressive passes that completely broke defensive lines. He won 5 Premier League titles and a Champions League. Yet, incredibly, successive England managers routinely left him just rotting on the bench. Make it make sense.
This whole archetype is built on players with an undying commitment to tactical rigidity over personal glory. Think of Park Ji-sung. He was Ferguson's ultimate tactical weapon, a man seemingly born with 3 lungs who famously man-marked Andre Pirlo completely out of existence in the Champions League. Then you have Gilberto Silva, the invisible wall, the unheralded defensive anchor that allowed Arsenal's invincibles to express themselves so freely without ever fearing a counterattack. And Javier Mascherano, an elite, highly aggressive defensive midfielder who willingly sacrificed his natural position to play as an undersized center-back for Pep Guardiola's Barcelona. They were the ultimate tactical martyrs. They absorbed all the pressure just so their teammates could breathe.
You know, and Steven Gerrard, who is arguably the greatest box-to-box midfielder of his entire generation, says you are the hardest player he's ever faced. History really should listen. Yaya Touré was a terrifying paradox of a footballer. Imagine a guy built like an NFL linebacker who somehow possesses the delicate, intricate touch of a classic number 10. He could sit deep and effortlessly dictate the tempo of a match, or if he felt like it, he could simply drop his shoulder, bulldoze his way through 4 elite defenders, and curl a 25-yard free kick into the top corner to guarantee Manchester City 20 goals a season. Yet somehow, his name is routinely and bafflingly left out of the greatest midfielder ever debates.
Okay, part 4, the statistical anomalies, numbers that demand respect.
Because look, while narratives can be manipulated and flashy highlights can be forgotten, raw historical data cannot be argued with. 253. I really want you to let that number sink in. That is the staggering number of career goals scored by the Dutch icon Ronald Koeman. To put that in perspective for you, he is the highest scoring defender in the entire history of the sport. He possessed a right foot like a traction engine, completely redefining the attacking parameters of what a center back could be. He wasn't just casually scoring a few penalties here and there, he was driving through midfields and unleashing absolute rockets, even scoring the decisive historic free kick to win Barcelona the 1992 European Cup.
0. That is the number of goals Olivier Giroud scored during the 2018 World Cup.
He played every single match. He was the focal point of the attack. He lifted the most coveted trophy in sports for France, and he was endlessly, brutally mocked by the global media for failing to find the back of the net. Yet this incredibly unselfish target man went on to win the Champions League with Chelsea, a Serie A title with AC Milan, and quietly, almost completely under the radar, became France's all-time leading goalscorer, surpassing the legendary Thierry Henry himself. He is the ultimate, undeniable proof that a striker's true value isn't just in the goals they score, but the critical space they create for everyone else.
Now consider the quiet, unrelenting consistency of Edin Dzeko. This guy dragged Wolfsburg to a miracle Bundesliga title, he won the Premier League, he completely dominated in Serie A and in Turkey. Statistically, Dzeko has outscored absolute Premier League icons like Wayne Rooney and Didier Drogba in the 21st century. Let me say that again so it really registers. He outscored Didier Drogba. He is a perfectly complete forward, adept with both feet, dominant in the air, and devastatingly intelligent in his link-up play. Yet, you will almost never, ever hear his name mentioned in top-tier striker debates on modern television broadcasts.
And speaking of Dzeko basically being erased from history, think back to what is arguably the single most famous moment in Premier League history, 2012, the final day, Queen's Park Rangers. Aguero! The entire world remembers Sergio Aguero's iconic, dramatic, title-winning strike. But memory is highly selective, isn't it? Almost no one remembers that City were actually losing deep into stoppage time, and it was Edin Dzeko who scored the desperate bullet header equalizer in the 92nd minute. Without Dzeko's clutch, incredibly high-pressure intervention right then and there, the Aguero moment literally never exists. The stage was built by the shadow before the light could ever shine.
637. That is the monumental number of Premier League appearances for James Milner. And look, this isn't just a fun little piece of trivia about longevity, it is a masterclass in relentless, agonizing physical dedication. Over 2 decades, playing for Leeds, Newcastle, Aston Villa, Manchester City, Liverpool, and Brighton. The man is a Champions League winner and a 3-time league champion who totally adapted his game to play in 5 different positions. He sacrificed his body and his ego every single day to remain at the absolute pinnacle of an unforgiving, physically destructive sport. He is the absolute standard bearer for total professionalism.
Finally, Part 5, Redefining Football Immortality, Looking Beyond the Spotlight.
As we wrap up this explainer and re-examine this beautiful game, we really must redefine what greatness actually means. Greatness is Dennis Irwin, an absolute machine quietly locking down the flanks for 7 Premier League titles at Manchester United. It is Philip Lahm, a defender who played an entire legendary career tackling the world's most dangerous, explosive wingers without ever, not even once, receiving a single red card. It's Leighton Baines, quietly racking up 53 Premier League assists from left back with an absolute wand of a left foot. It is Dani Carvajal, who quietly pocketed elite wingers for a decade to collect a staggering 6 Champions League titles with Real Madrid. True immortality, guys, is measured in this quiet, unflinching consistency.
So the crucial takeaway from this explainer is actually a challenge to how you consume the sport. The next time you sit down to watch a match and you see a striker wheeling away toward the corner flag, just soaking in the roaring adulation of 70,000 screaming fans, don't just watch the celebration. Take a second to look back down the pitch. Look into the shadows, find the unsung hero who tracked back 70 yards, who won the brutal sliding tackle, and who played the physics-defying bounce pass that made all of that glory possible. Because a superstar is only as good as the player willing to suffer for them. So tell me, who is the true architect behind your favorite team?